Camera needs a good shot of this. Good evening, everybody. I call this work session of the New Kent County School Board, May 19th, 2025 to order. Ms. Davis, will you please call roll?
Mr. Pagano,
Present.
Ms. Cunha,
Present.
Ms. Dombrowski,
Present.
Mr. Vaught,
Present.
Mr. Reiner.
Present. All right, all members present and accounted for, rise for the pledge of allegiance, please. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, everybody, by my count, we've got about 8 items to discuss. Just kind of a framework here, about 15 minutes an item puts us at 2 hours. So let's see if we can get through some of these things. The first one is mine, the vote of consideration protocol that we voted into place. I just kind of want to button that up a little bit. And so my suggestion is to add 2 things to that protocol. One is that whatever board member puts forward their request or their policy change or whatever it may be, that they actually attach the relevant policies and code to that request, et cetera, so that the rest of us don't have to try to dig up what AAFA is and 3G59 and all these other references, so that we all have them handy. And then the other thing is that, to provide sort of a detailed plan of action steps, if you will, for the board to consider. The idea behind it is, I don't like this policy. Here's why I think it should change. The policy is attached, and here's what I think those changes should be, so that we have concrete things to discuss so that we can make headway on an item, instead of sort of having this blue sky idea that nobody really knows what direction we're going in or what, the board member is trying to change or accomplish. So I'm going to revisit those one more time. What I would suggest and what I want us to consider is adding sort of 2 more, if you will, prongs to the vote of consideration protocol. One is attaching the policies of the code sections or whatever it is that we are referencing. And the second one is providing sort of a plan of action. What is it that the board member wants to see done specifically? Whether that's the change in policy, whether that's the incorporation of something specific in the curriculum, like say what it is so that we have an idea of how we move forward with whatever that particular thing is presented by the board member. So open discussion.
Mr. Chair,
Please.
with the general plan of action, you're looking for something, general. You're not looking for a specific, this is exactly what I want to do, but just more of my thought is, if we're going to come to the board with an idea, before we put a lot of time and effort into crafting it and finalizing our thoughts, it's more or less bringing it before the board with a general outline of what we would like to do, to see that the board overall has a consensus on, yes, this is something we would be interested in moving forward with. So let's, yes, please move forward, and we will give it consideration once we have all the details. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I think you raised that same exact point last time, and it's a valid point, which is why we're going to do all of this work if the board says no.
Right.
I completely understand that. But I think we have to have, I'm not necessarily sure general is the right word, but we have to have something to, with some teeth in it to decide, yes, we want to take a further look into that. Go ahead and do step number 2 and come back with the detailed plan of action, if you will.
So Keith,
Right.
if I may-
Versus just, here's my idea, right? It's got to be something more than that, so that
Right.
we have an idea or a direction as to what it is that the board member is asking the rest of us to do and or asking administration to do. right? And then I
Yeah.
think if we say, I think you're right. I think if we say, okay, with that framework, the basic framework,
Mhm.
yes, this is something we want to move forward with, then we're putting it on an agenda,
Right,
and now you got to come with all your details and we hash all that out.
right.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think to your point earlier, these items have to be actionable.
Correct.
And we may change them, but the ones that are presented need to be actionable.
I think it's a great word. Mr. Chair, please.
I think quite the opposite. And I hear what you're saying, and that does make sense in theory. But if I have changes I want to make, I think it would be better for me to come with the details, very specific details, which will give us, I think, a clear runway instead of trying to put the pieces together to make something. At least, hey, this is exactly what I would like to see and how I would change it if it were just me. And then go from there to give us, and I think in doing that, we'll be able to avoid a lot of time and discussion. And the only thing that may be added or amended to that would be things that perhaps if I put it together that I may have missed in framing my idea, and you see, and you go, hey, but I like that, but you need to add this, rather than talk in generals. I think we should come with a very specific action plan. That we've, I've read this, I put some time into it, I've thought about it. This is what we need to do, and be very specific about it. And then from there, we can, pull pieces out, put pieces in, but at least we've got, a solid.
I mean, I also think that's a valid point, and I don't disagree, because the goal is to either get it off our agenda or get it on our agenda so we can do something with it, right? We don't necessarily want to be in a position where it's, hey, the first meet, the second, the third, the fourth time, and we're still talking about this thing. That's not the idea, right? The idea is to move it forward. But I also think, Ron, to a degree, it depends on the subject matter.
I was going to say.
Right, if it's a policy change and we wanted to say X instead of Z, then yeah, I fully expect that a board member would come with a specific, man, we need to change it and make it say this. Right, no more crop tops for girls. I mean, that's a simple change, right? I think it's maybe a little bit more complicated when and I still want the detail, but when we're saying, hey, let's do something with communism and curriculum and establish a day and adopt this resolution and all these pieces and parts, that maybe the board member can't get into the minutia because we need feedback, from other people if the board decides to move forward with it. So I think maybe it depends on the subject matter. But I do think most of the things we're dealing with, we should, as much as you can, come prepared and have it as detailed as you can so that we're fast tracking these things. We're either killing it or we're moving forward with it.
And I agree with that. I thank you for that. And yeah, so it would be, this is old policy, and here's my recommended policy. And the details and why I feel that way, or what I see that may help the system down the road.
Mr. Chair,
Please.
I want to piggyback on what you said, and I was going to say the same thing, and it really depends on the topic. If it's a matter of a policy that needs to be changed, or something in the policy that we're going to look at to possibly revise, but sometimes it might be something that, yes, it has to tie into a policy, but it's broader. Maybe it's something that you want to, let's say we want to introduce something related to the social studies curriculum. Now, we don't write the curriculum. We don't decide how that topic is going to be covered. That's administration and teachers. But as a board, if we decide this is important for us as a board and we want to push this as an initiative, and now it's up to administration and the teachers to come up with the plan of how they're going to implement that. It takes a little more conversation and more discussion. And so I'm not going to come with this really detailed proposal when I haven't even gotten your feedback and everyone else's, because it might be a moot point. I might be outvoted and it's not going to be pushed forward.
And I hear what you're saying, and I agree to some degree, but the point is, I think we have come, what has happened to us before, just looking looking at our history, we tend to talk in circles about the same thing. And as the chairman said, it moves itself out 5 generations of meetings and we still haven't done anything. So my point is, however the thing looks or what the mechanism is to get there, that's why I thought if we had more specifics, then we could break those down.
Yeah.
Rather than having a general conversation, which
It
doesn't
looks better in
necessarily.
the public purview as well.
Yeah, and it doesn't,
It does.
and I hear what you're saying. You can't, not everything's gonna fit into the box. And it's gonna be, if this is something very new, or something that we desire as a board. But I would rather bring you something, if it were me to make the change and you say, I appreciate that, but I don't know what you're thinking about, or that doesn't really fit, rather than not have specifics. But I hear what you're saying. I agree. Like I said, to some degree, so.
Mr. Chair,
Please.
going back to the proposal for the resolution to make November 7th Victims of Communism Memorial Day. In my head, it was my understanding that we were supposed to bring it forward as a matter of consideration. So as to, I guess, obtain board permission to utilize Dr. Nichols' time or anybody else in administration who may be involved, just as a way so that we're all on the same page so that you know what I'm doing. It wasn't a matter I anticipated or expected to be brought for approval on that night. It was just, this is something I'm looking into, and may I have permission, the board's approval, authorization to move forward with utilizing Dr. Nichols and maybe Ross Miller's time and digging into this deeper. And so I feel like I didn't express that or clarify that, but that was my purpose,
Yep.
is because it was in my head that that was what we needed to do.
I think you perfectly described it, because I think if you would, I wasn't clear on what
Right,
you were
Right.
doing or saying or trying to put us forward. If you would have, I think, said that,
Mhm.
then I think we could have said, all right, do we want to do that or not? And we
Right.
could have had a vote on that night, and you could have got a go ahead or a don't go ahead,
Right.
right? So I think it's a matter of, the ideas are good, but we've got to say, all right, what is the action step? What do you want us to do now?
Right.
Right? Instead of just, again, this kind of this blue sky idea is we're just having an open discussion. We're not going anywhere,
Right.
right? Just having a target, so to speak. All right, so that's almost 15 minutes on topic 1, believe it or not. Anybody else have any information? Any feedback, any comments? Anybody have an objection to either one of those 2 additions to the protocol to clear it up for us? Okay, great. So number 2, or 2B rather, is also me, school board budget allotment. So
Shouldn't we vote?
there's not a vote, but we can put it on as an action item in a minute. Yeah. Actually, if you want to make that motion, I'm going to say,
Mr. Chairman, I move that we add an action item to vote on the suggested amendments to,
Mr. Reimer has the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Vaught has a second. If Davis, please poll the board.
Mr. Reimer,
aye.
Mr. Vaught,
Aye.
Ms. Dombrowski,
Sorry, can you please restate exactly what we're voting on?
I will restate, we're voting on to approve the amendments that the chairman has suggested to the consideration protocol.
Mr. Reimer. Because there's no action item, you have to amend the agenda.
Yeah.
And then we'll
That's-
vote, we'll have action item at the end.
So
I think that
move
was the intended motion. But please,
Oh.
Mr. Reimer, please restate your motion for the record.
I move that we amend the agenda to add a vote to approve the amendments that the chairman has proposed to the vote, to the consideration protocol. Is that clear enough?
Norms and protocols.
And Mr. Vaught,
Second.
Ms. Davis, please poll the board.
Mr. Reimer,
Aye.
Mr. Vaught,
Aye.
Ms. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Ms. Cunha,
Aye.
Mr. Pagano.
Aye. All right, so the motion passes. The agenda is amended. We have added an action item that will come up later on this evening. Record clear?
We just make sure they order.
It's okay. Record clear? Good, great. All right, moving on to B, school board budget allotment. So this came to me two different ways. Number one is sort of trying to figure out what each of us has as a resource to do our continuing legal education and some other things that, the board members are A, required to do, and B, are enjoying doing and getting educated. And then also just as a budget item in general from another discussion. Quite honestly, when I asked Haney for this, I thought our number was a little small, believe it or not. I thought it was in the $6,000 range, but that's a pretty good number. I think it gives us the flexibility to do a few things. And here's what I would propose, and it's just a starter. It's open for discussion. Number one is that the five of us agree on a number that is allotted to each of us for our annual continuing legal education classes and books and so on. And I'm just going to start by saying $750 per person. Okay, so I think that's $3,750 or something like that out of the total budget. There is, at least historically, part of this is travel, which we don't do, is hotel, which we don't do, and it's meals, which we don't do. So I'm not a huge fan of that. And what I would propose is that we consider establishing two things. One, perhaps a school board scholarship or two, maybe one for academics, one for athletics, that we honor a student with who's going on to higher education. And then number three would be, and this could be a rotating thing, but we make some type of annual donation or maybe semi-annual donation to support athletics teams at the various schools. So, for example, $1,000 this year to the high school soccer, or $1,000 this year to the girls field hockey or something like that. But it's the school board allocating those resources back that we're not using and really have no other purpose for. And my understanding is, the athletic departments specifically could really use the support and the assistance. So I open the floor. Those are just my ideas.
Mr. Chair,
Please.
the only problem I have with that is that sometimes there are travel expenses depending on where a conference is or a workshop, perhaps, that we may want to attend. And then we're limiting ourselves to the possibilities. Usually it's in Richmond or it's in Williamsburg. But for example, there's one coming up, which I'm interested in attending. Luckily, it's through a scholarship. I know that Ms. Dombrowski is looking, and it's in Cincinnati, Ohio. Now, that's going to be paid for because they're going to pay it. They're going to pay it. Was it a scholarship or yeah. But there could be something in the future where maybe one of us, and the chair or someone else may want to attend something. And so if we established a scholarship, I think it's a great idea.
Mhm.
But I think if we don't allow some for travel, possibly, we're limiting ourselves as a board
Okay.
for professional
So just,
development.
again, open discussion. My ideas are not the ideas. It's everybody's ideas. Okay. So what I'm hearing is, at least the way that I would frame it, is maybe we take a certain percentage of that and set it aside and hold it as discretionary funds. So that if something pops up, or there's something out of the ordinary, or there's some other expense that we don't foresee, we have a discretionary amount of money that we could apply to that if we decided that's what we want
I have
to
a
do.
slightly different view on this. Is there any reason to suppose we can't meet our legal requirements with conferences and seminars in the area that do not require travel?
Mr. Chair?
You don't have to raise your hand, please, just open discussion.
I think what Helena may have been referring to as far as travel expenses is sometimes when we've gone downtown, there's, the gas and parking. Not that, we're very central to a lot of these things where we do not stay overnight. As far as obtaining our legal requirements in training, my understanding is the only thing we are legally required to do is the FOIA and FOIA training, which is done online, and it's every other year. Otherwise, when I look at the policy regarding school board member in-service activities, which is essentially professional development, I don't see anything that says you have to have this number of hours. So it's really left up to us to determine how much how much time we can invest in obtaining these, and there are those that cost and those that don't. So we don't legally even have to do this.
So that, thank you. I think we're a small district and a poor district. And I don't like spending money this way when I think it can go somewhere else. That's, that's my view.
So are
I'm
you
not-
saying you don't support spending money on any kind of professional development training?
No, that's not what I said.
Okay, I was just trying to
I
clarify.
said that I'm reluctant to spend money on any professional training, which is a slightly different thing. I think there should be a budget, but I think it should be frugal. And we should weigh what benefit it is to the board when we take these things. Now, something about superintendent evaluation that has a clear, traceable purpose, right? Something about budgets could have a clear, traceable purpose. But I'm a little concerned that, that this training may not always be useful to the board. And
I understand your point, and I concur to a degree. I mean, I think with anything that any of us do, there's a reasonableness factor. Not picking on the seminar because I don't know anything about it, but Cincinnati, Ohio wouldn't even be on my radar, right? Because it's just
it's
something
not
else.
something-
But good news, it's covered, right? So that's a great thing.
And
Go
this is a
enjoy and learn.
separate thing.
But
I wouldn't have.
yeah. But and then exactly that, right? How does it tie back to the board and our goals and what it is that we're doing? Taking a seminar just to take a seminar, we have a budget and you can do it, but I mean, I would just ask again, why are we doing it? What's the reasonableness behind it? How is it coming back to the board? How is it benefiting our school district? Right? I mean, there are certain seminars out there, and we've all been to a couple of them, that it was a complete waste of several hours.
Yeah.
totally.
Right? People are just chapping at the gums, and we didn't learn anything, and we didn't have anything actionable that we could bring back to the board and help us operate better. Right? And then you've got theory, and then you've got curriculum, and then you've got this person's view who wrote the book. All that stuff is wonderful, and it's knowledge, but how is it coming back to us, and what are we doing with that?
Considering what Heather was able to clarify in terms of policy and the needs or the lack of needs for professional development, I would say furthers the cause of doing what you had recommended in terms of, because if the 3,500 is not needed for professional development, you can do it online. Then my recommendation would be that we would divide that by 5. And that would be the number you get for whatever you're going to do. And in the event that I do it online and I haven't used 750 and there's something, you say, hey, then the consideration would be, hey, I'm willing to yield that for that cause and on a voluntary purpose. As far as
So,
future,
and just to clarify, so in other words, and I like the idea, which is whatever the amount of money we agree on, it's pooled. And
right,
if a member doesn't use it all, it can roll over to another member who would like to
Absolutely.
use it. Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
I like it. I like that idea. Yeah.
And then as far as future travel or whatever else, my thought is, if I see something or there's something that I want to attend that's going to be a little more costly, I'll take the stipend and set it aside and take care of that out of that, because it certainly is not, you can't make a living there. And it may as well be given back because essentially that's, what happens.
Well, I think that's the general idea behind it.
Yeah,
The majority of those funds is we're serving a civic duty.
Exactly.
So they're paying us to reimburse us for doing that.
exactly.
It's not
Right.
salaried income.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And so I like the idea of giving back, an academic award or, sports award. The girls, let's say their softball team needs new uniforms or something. Hey, you know what? This year, here you go. Or you know, if it's the, you know, academic award of some sort, or, you know, a student that has excelled, and let's recognize them with the scholarship.
Not only that,
I like
from
that.
a big picture perspective, I think it makes the board look fantastic. Right? We're
Yeah.
engaged, we're giving up some of our benefit to benefit the kids, like from a PR perspective, which is not the goal here. But from a PR perspective, it looks like the board is engaged and on the level and contributing.
Well, it not only looks like it, we're having that discussion right now. It's the reality of
Right.
who we are and what we're thinking about. So I firmly am, you know, tracking with doing that, and then taking that number 3,500, dividing it and having that pool available, and say, Helena, the Cincinnati trip, for whatever the reason, I don't know what it is either, but let's say you needed that. I'm not going anywhere. Then it's like, hey, please go for it. You know, that'll be good.
So are you saying that the scholarship money, let's say, or the annual donation would come from whatever we don't use from that 750? Or is that from other funds like travel board services or 2,500? And, you
Yeah,
know,
so my notion is we have 9,550,
yeah,
right? That's our pool of
Yeah.
money. We can reframe work how it is here. So for example, if it was, you know, 3,750 is $750 a person. If anybody wants to throw out another number, please do that. You know, for the year for your classes. And then let's say we took 1,250 and set it aside in a discretionary fund in case there is an unexpected thing or travel expense, right? That's $5,000.
Mhm.
So now we've got 4,550 left that we decide, all right, you know, a couple $1,000 to support teams, a couple $1,000 for scholarships, something like that.
Sure.
So Chair, if I can just make
Please.
one clarification. Your $2,700 line infrastructure board services, that is the cost of board docs. So
I was
that
gonna
would have
say,
I was wondering.
Yeah,
that would not be in. Correct.
yeah, we can't touch that.
Okay.
And that's board docs light, not the premium version.
No,
So
we-
no,
Yeah.
seriously, that's what it's called. That's board docs light.
Got it.
Well, board docs is light.
And the meal boards, I know Haney Ms. Morheim was explaining something about the meal board services, that category. Is that like when we have school board events? And
So
then they
potentially-
supply food or,
Yeah, so I pulled the actuals. Actually, I did nothing. Our finance team.
just so we know. exactly
Pulled
what
the
we're talking
actuals.
about. We know exactly how much.
So
we're on.
for example, in 24, when we hosted you guys for the first time, after your swearing in piece. So that came out of that fund there.
Yeah,
To date in 25, we have not touched that line. So the event that we're going to have this week, that the board will be involved with, Team Connect, comes out of our HR side of things because it's recognizing employees. So that is not a line that is used often. So I think that is an opportunity
there might be some room there.
as
then.
well.
What has traditionally happened to the money if there's anything left over?
So
there?
our favorite thing to do, and our recommendation on the finance side, is anything you're not using, put in our contingency, which you know is very
Yeah,
slim.
I was thinking that was it,
so-
and I
Mhm.
kind of like that
So
too, but I do like Keith's idea as well, but traditionally it's gone into contingency.
yes,
And-
sir.
Let me just kind of throw this out there. So if we're saying, and again, I'm not hung up on these numbers, guys, but if we're saying 3,750 for classes, 1,250 discretion, 2,700 board docs, that leaves us with 1,850,
Right.
right? So even if it was, hey, let's set aside, you know, $500 for some type of food for an event that we may or may not do.
Mhm.
Now we've got, you know, 1,000 or 1,200, and even if it's $500 to the band or $500, then we're doing something,
We could do two,
right?
500 apiece.
Right. And this is, by the way, this is just sort of a
Yeah,
a
we're
notion
afraid-
that then we can run by Haney and make sure everything fits into box.
I don't know why we would take that. I don't know why we would raise that to 3,750. I'm in favor of lowering that even, considering anything and everything that we actually need and are required by policy to have, doesn't cost a dime.
Well, let's-
So,
Well,
I'm with you, but let's do this. So
mhm.
the one I did in January for new chairman, I think was $200, 225, something like that. And that's the only thing I've spent money on this year. On average, what would you guys say the typical class or seminar is costing.
Well, the VSBA, like that one in November in Williamsburg is, I believe it's 325 or 275. So it's not unreasonable. Let's say $700. Two workshops, let's say at max 350 a piece, that's $700.
Right.
And that's, that's two. They charge quite a lot. Now, the webinars, sometimes, like the superintendent evaluation one, that was 200 and something.
180.
Oh, 180,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, because that was, I didn't go, I was over now. Some of them are free, and I try to do as many free ones as I can.
Sure.
But that's why I think, okay, 700, I think, would be a fair number to have per year. And like,
We
and like
can
you
do-
said.
We do 2 or 3 inside of that 700, depending on how you
Right,
play it.
Exactly.
Mr. Dombrowski, thoughts?
I am a little concerned because I do really appreciate the opportunity to be a member of SBMA as well. I feel like I get a lot of benefits from that. So I believe, based on an email to you, is that 350 membership fee would be deducted from the 750.
All right. Is that accurate?
Currently, yes, because it is an individual membership and not a board membership.
Right,
That comes out of the professional development line.
that's right.
So
The other question is there any concern with utilizing these funds for a scholarship? I mean, is there any legalities or
I think
problems?
we would have to, if you guys wanted us to pursue that, we would provide an update to you as far as kind of the legalities of the
Legalities,
process related to any and all things. But whatever you guys want us to take forward, we're happy to do the research for you and come back. And we just need a little direction from the board. So yeah.
Any other comments or input or suggestions? So why don't we do this? Let me, I guess, propose a framework and then I will circulate it and we'll just put it in front of Haney and administration and get some feedback to see what it is that we can and can't do. I mean, maybe scholarships is not a thing, but athletic donations or sponsorships is, and vice versa. If anybody has thoughts about the numbers in terms of, the annual allotment, if you will, for classes and webinars and the discretionary amount, and just shoot me an email, one-on-one, so that I can kind of play with that a little bit, and then I'll shoot it to Haney and see if we can get some traction.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I do really appreciate this coming before the board so that we can, it's really good to know what we have.
Clarify, sure,
Yeah, it's
absolutely.
important.
All right, very good, thank you. Moving on, superintendent evaluation, Ms. Cunha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Fellow board members, as you know, the school board is required to evaluate the superintendent annually. The primary purpose of the superintendent evaluation is to improve educational performance, both for the superintendent and the entire school division, to inform the superintendent of the board's expectations, improve superintendent and board relations and communication, to clarify the roles of the superintendent, improve planning, assist in the professional development of the superintendent, provide a basis for personal decisions, serve as an accountability tool, and satisfy legal requirements. Based on the training I received both in VSBA and SBMA and from other professional organizations, evaluating the superintendent should be a year-round process. The recommendation is that school boards move away from one-time evaluations towards an ongoing formative feedback system that fosters growth and alignment. This includes the following components: goal setting, and that usually happens before the beginning of each school year. First initially with the school board among the members, and then of course in cooperation with the superintendent. They recommend a mid-year review. This can include a formative assessment, although it is not required. What that would look like, the mid-year review can be decided between the board and the superintendent. And then, of course, there's a summative evaluation, which happens at the end of each school year using the superintendent evaluation tool. That tool is something that should be established by the school board in conjunction with the superintendent and mutually agreed upon. Now, with this in mind, I recommend we address the following 4 things. The first being when to conduct the 24, I'm a little confused because I'm saying 24-25 school year, 24-25 school year superintendent evaluation. But Dr. Nichols, maybe you could clarify because the staple documents there had 23-24, so maybe I'm saying that
No, ma'am,
wrong.
and I apologize. I just wanted to provide you guys just a reminder of what I put together for you annually.
Yes.
This was the one from this is not for this
Okay.
year. This year is still in process. We work on it every week as a team and add it. So it is done by standard. And I know not everybody was able to participate. So I just wanted to just a refresh on what we put together for you by standard, by achievement. And then you have the final standard in the back is the data piece. So.
Thank you, Dr. Nichols. I appreciate you clarifying that.
Yes,
That makes perfect sense. Section 7 of the current superintendent contract states it must be completed, or the superintendent evaluation must be completed prior to the end of each fiscal year. And that means just June 30th, 2025. Using the current evaluation tool, and Ms. Davis has provided that current evaluation tool in our folders this evening, so you could look through it. The second thing I wish for us to address is reviewing section C, code CBG, which is the current policy on evaluating the superintendent, and decide as a board if it needs to be revised. The third item I wish for us to consider is to review the current superintendent evaluation tool and decide if it needs to be revised or replaced entirely to better reflect the recommendations I briefly outlined in my opening statement. I have provided more detailed information on the slide presentation I shared with you all and Dr. Nichols. This can be accomplished this summer at a work session. And the last thing I ask you to consider is for us to update section 7 of the new superintendent contract. We are currently in contract negotiations with the superintendent to reflect any changes made to the policy and or the evaluation tool beginning with the 25-26 school year.
Okay, two things as it stands now, and the first one is very easy, which is in the contract that we are considering, the language is proposed to be changed. So that fiscal year is removed and replaced with calendar year. So that's number one. Number two, the contract itself says, and I think you have some of this referenced in here, Ms. Cunha.
Yeah.
And of course, I don't have my glasses. Give me a second.
You have it here.
That so this is in the contract, but it's also state code,
Mhm.
which is why it's in the contract. So we can't deviate from state code. We can apply what it is that we may want to do, but it has to be in compliance with the code. So it says that New Kent County School Superintendent Evaluation, which is based on the Board of Education guidelines, is because section 22.1-60.1 requires, so this is Virginia code, each local school board shall evaluate the division superintendent annually consistent with the performance objectives set forth in the guidelines for uniform performance standards and evaluation criteria for teachers, administrators, and superintendents as required by Virginia Code 22.1-253-13.5. So that code section gives us the criteria that we are required to evaluate by. So the school board, this is from our attorney, by the way, the school board can use its own instrument, if you will. So we could, I guess, manipulate the instrument or modify the instrument, but it must be based on those guidelines and that code section.
Understood. That's correct.
So when you, and maybe I misunderstood you, but you hit a couple of points there. So I thought I heard you say that you wanted us to consider changing the tool. Is that right?
Possibly changing the tool.
Okay.
In cooperation with Dr. Nichols, given that we have our new strategic plan, and so that we can align our goals, the school board goals, with Dr. Nichols, perhaps in a clearer, more precise way. Of course, we're going to be using the standards. We're still going to use the 8 standards. So for example, right now, under each standard, they're all 9 possible performance indicators are listed. And the recommendation really is that the board decide to choose 2 or 3 performance indicators for each of those standards, because 9 performance indicators is a bit over the top. So what I'm proposing is streamlining it along with Dr. Nichols' input so that it becomes a more effective tool, less redundancy, et cetera.
Anybody have any questions, comments, input?
Who invented HR?
Who invented HR?
Sorry.
I haven't experienced any issues. I don't foresee any problems which would perpetuate any changes. That being said, no matter what we do in terms of strategic plan or whatever else, this, I think, is still a more than adequate tool to evaluate the superintendent. Streamlining it, absolutely. I'd be in line for reeling in some of the redundancy and making it smaller, shorter, whatever. As long as there's no wholesale change. If we start to make wholesale change, then I'm completely and totally adamantly against it and will stand against it.
What do you mean by a wholesale change?
For
Can you
instance, if
clarify
we
that?
don't take 1 through 9 and pull from that is there, but we decide to write our own in there and make new methods of tool and adding to the tool box that we're working from. I'm not in agreement with. I would be opposed to that.
Yeah.
That's just for clarification. In terms of, as I look at this, the coming 2 years ahead of us now is we're proposing a lot of change, and there's going to be a lot to do, and it's going to require a lot of our time. And one of the things I'm least concerned about is superintendent and his evaluation and or her evaluation down the road. More concerned about getting the elementary school built and the athletic field done and the other things that we're going to have on our plate. I believe this would add to that. And if there is nothing glaring wrong with it, I would like to leave it alone. I don't see any point. Obviously you do, and I appreciate that and respect that, but I don't from where I'm sitting.
Okay.
So my thought is to leave it as it is, aside from, hey, if we want to streamline to make this even shorter and easier, of course, if it can serve the same purpose and give us the same outcome. That's, so yeah, that's where I am with that. Just.
Mr. Chair, looking at the policy, CBG, it says the school board develops the instrument to evaluate the superintendent after consulting the uniform performance standards and criteria developed by the Board of Education and the superintendent. So if I understand Ms. Cunha correctly, you're not looking for a wholesale change, but maybe a way to simplify and streamline it.
And I mean, if you say it's adequate, many things are adequate, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't a better tool that we can.
I'm not saying it's adequate. I'm saying it's.
Well, that's the word you use, adequate.
Well, then I misspoke. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. It's more than adequate.
Yeah.
I'm curious, do you have a sample tool?
If we all have the same tool,
No, did you have a sample tool that you were interested in?
again, this is going back to our first topic. I'm not going to spend
I
5
see.
hours.
No.
I shared with you a slide presentation that had 23 slides on it, and it had a lot of recommendations on possible things you could use for an evaluation. And that was streamlined from the superintendent workshop, evaluation workshop, that was 80-something slides.
Well,
And
so-
I shared that with everyone.
No,
Now, one of the things I emphasize And this is for our consideration. And again, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. That's not what I'm looking for. But as a board, we need to have a discussion. For example, the weighting of each category. The standard or default is 1.25 times 8, which is equal to 10. 10
Per
per
performance
per
standard.
standard, per performance standard. But, for example, standard 8, which is academic achievement, we could say, well, we want that to count 1.5 versus 1.25, and maybe standard 6, we only maybe want it to count 1 and not 1.25. So I'm just saying that as a board, if people were in agreement and wanted to spend half an hour reviewing that at a later point at a work session over the summer, along with Dr. Nichols, we could decide as a board. But I think it's important as a board that we, especially as a new board, that we have an opportunity to have these discussions.
You
And I'm not
misunderstood
saying we
my
should,
question.
I'm not saying that we should take hours on this.
I
Now,
I don't know how we avoid that. We seem to do that no matter what.
well,
That's our nature.
Mr. Vice Chair, unfortunately, sometimes discussions need to be had. Not all of us agree that they do need to be had. And that's for us.
Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're elongated. Sometimes sometimes discussions become bloviation. And that's where we kind of get in the mud sometimes over issues. And that's what I'm saying. If there was something glaring and something, man, that was just so wrong with what we have before us, yes, let's talk about it. Let's bring it up. Let's make changes. But I can't find that in what we're using currently to perpetuate something different or spending any length of time. This board that I can recall, I may be wrong, has never had a 30-minute discussion on anything. I don't think it's possible. And not just this board. I think it's the nature of, you get more than 2 people in a discussion, then that happens. So that's all I'm saying.
So I have a recommendation to make,
Please.
Mr. Chair. I can put something together as an example. My purpose is to streamline this. We don't need 9 performance indicators for each standard.
And
My
Mr.
purpose is not to make this a cumbersome evaluation tool.
And you misunderstood my intent. I was wanting something visual so that I could compare,
Yes.
because I'm open to change if it's useful.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Well, Ms. Cunha, I was actually going to suggest what it is that you just suggested, which is, why don't you, if you want to take the onus, revise the survey, streamline, get rid of the excess, and circulate that to us, and we can put it on a work session and or propose it as something for a vote of consideration. And if the streamlined tool is something we're all excited about, then we can vote, put it on a following agenda and approve it.
I would like to have the opportunity to just discuss this with Dr. Nichols because it is an evaluation that would be of his performance. So if Dr. Nichols, if you would have time to discuss that with me and give me your input, I would really appreciate it.
And I love the idea of streamlining. I said that, and I would even, if you would care to do it as an example in terms of the weighting, I like that.
Okay.
Because that may be those 2 things alone, streamlining and adjusting the weight on different things. That may be just the perfect,
Now-
recipe.
The only thing that's not included here, so we're clear, is all the evidence that Dr. Nichols provides for each of those standards, which he gave the example from 23-24. And that's why I think it's important for me to have an opportunity to run it by Dr. Nichols as well, to get his input, because he has to approve whatever it has to be a mutual agreement, in other
Sure.
words.
And that may also lessen the amount of stuff that he has to collect to try to, put in his,
Well, he still has to
Presentation.
provide evidence for all 8 standards. I mean, that's
but I mean,
required.
yeah, but
Yeah.
he may find that it streamlines his.
Okay.
We're good?
I don't think I'd be opposed to streamlining.
Yeah, no, I don't think anyone is.
Do you have
Right.
any other comments that would you like to weigh in on?
Oh, well, I think I think just I've been a part of, so I've had 12 board members in my first 4.5 years here. I've had 6 different chairs, and we've been able to sort of navigate, whatever comes our way. We've been through some things. So, you know, like we work with staff, as long as it's clear on the front end, you can hit a target. So the clearer we can be on what that target is, and then I can kind of determine whether that's a target, that we can actually go after. I do think we have to be careful because life happens and school happens and we shift and kind of go through. So, but I'm sure we can figure out a way that there's room in there for that. I've been here long enough that how the year starts and how the year ends are not necessarily the same. We've been through a global pandemic. We've been through, so I did not have the cell phone piece on my bingo card for, like a year and a half ago. But we managed that this year, and that was a big piece. So in terms of goals, my goals, I think, are pretty clear, and that's making sure that strategic plan happens. So that's why I come before you every month, and I'm giving you those updates. So that's more of the formative piece to us. And so the more we can tie it with the structure we're doing now, the more helpful it is for me, and not one more thing. As I mentioned, we've cut an executive team member, so we're all taking those different pieces in order to make this engine go. So we can talk it through. Sure.
Great.
All right. Mr. Hockman's not here, so I'm guessing it's you, sir. Code of
Yes,
conduct.
sir. It is. Just briefly, just in conversation with board members, the last board meeting, you did get a code of conduct first read. You will have a second read coming up in June. But I wanted to zoom in a little bit on something we did not spend a whole lot of time on code of conduct talking about, but something we've talked about a lot as a team. And that is enforcement of dress code. So what you have on the screen and what is in board docs right now is kind of where we're at now. That may be too far away.
Just about to wrench your neck.
So that's as of May 14th. So you see in quarter one, the big emphasis on making sure that's in alignment and kind of working through with families and those pieces. You see a pretty significant dip as we get closer to colder weather. But also in full transparency, in some places, I don't think our enforcement was as consistent as it has been with cell phone. So I think specifically high school wise, they really went all in on the cell phone piece and may not have been as consistent because you have to be every single day. And then as seasons change, making sure that you continue that consistency. So just want to give you a couple updates and then open up for discussion. So some of the things that we've learned through the cell phone piece, we'd like to apply with the dress code piece. So high school completed a cell phone form, which made it easier to track for everybody. I don't know if you guys remember, I kind of brought that to you, made everything easier for the teachers to input. We have partnered with Simple Discipline to ease the input factor. So no more pushing paper, very easy on the teacher end, very easy on the staff end, so we can integrate that because we want it to be manageable. So making the form for dress code very similar so teachers can directly report it. And then admin can go directly to the rooms and do those different kind of pieces. Really get on the front end of this with one pagers and all of the emphasis on our back to school pieces and being very consistent there. And then we're only as good as the enforcement of everybody. So when I go to one place and it's not enforced, but I go to the other. So adding that to our teacher memorandums so that they know that is, along with cell phone, something that you have to be relentless about documenting. So there was no change in like levels and how the consequences, but I did want to bring you that data and then talk about our next steps to be even more deliberate and consistent with the enforcement piece. So that's really my update related to code of conduct, sir.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, may I ask?
Please.
So one of the things that, and I haven't figured out how to do this, but Is there any evidence that you can think of a positive result, of positive impact on the cell phone policy?
Oh, yes, sir. Both anecdotal and direct. So, yes, in terms of,
It would be great if we could, if there were evidence that we could collect.
yes, sir. I will tell you, so, I mean, you saw the data last time, I think it was
Yes.
419 at the high school. It's a lot of time in enforcement.
Yes.
But it does get better as you go through the year. And that was year one lift. Year two, I imagine, is going to be even more consistent. But yeah, we're looking at some of that data around attendance. We're looking at some of the time in classrooms and it's more correlational, but looking at some of the grade pieces related to it.
Yeah, so,
We can't say, X cause Y, but as you know, we can kind of correlate the two.
and I would like to be able to publicly talk about
Okay.
that, because I think this is, obviously, I was very invested in this policy, and I think it's important going forward, and getting the community to understand the benefit of the policy, I think would be very valuable.
And we had some bumps in the road with families initially because it was
Yes.
a big disconnect for families too. But we've been able to process that and work through that in terms of how we utilize the office.
We heard from a lot of them.
Yeah, we
Yes.
did.
Yes.
So
On a daily
coaches,
basis.
after school, so we've been navigating those pieces.
My constituents don't reach out to me, so I don't know if it's the New York thing or what's going on, but.
I think it is.
And thank
New
you
York
very much.
accent.
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate it. One
So
of-
there are kids that will privately thank you. I don't think they'll come on camera and do it, but there are some that have come up and just said,
I don't
as I
expect
got
them
used to
to,
it.
but, the board passed it because we thought it was something that would have a positive impact on the school, and it would be good if we could demonstrate to the community that it does.
And as I see other localities still wrestling with it,
Yeah.
If you read our VSBA daily, like there's somebody in there every day still wrestling. What are they? I just feel fortunate and thankful to both the middle school and the high school administration that we took it on and we went bell to bell. And now we're sitting in year two where some people just got on board January 1. So.
Dr. Nichols, I'm curious, along with what Mr. Reimer is saying, it's almost a year, right? And would it be possible to get feedback from the teachers? We asked for their feedback last year when we were thinking about implementing the cell phone free policy. Would it be possible? And again, I don't want to add more burden. Yeah, I don't want to add more burden to the teachers, but at some point, it would be so great to get their input. Is it really helping concentration? Less distraction in the classroom as far as ability to teach and all of that. It would be really interesting to get their feedback.
Okay.
Thank you.
Timing wise, we have 12 days.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
it's, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we revisit it in.
Over the summer,
yeah, I was like coming.
You know.
If I could do it coming back in August,
Sure,
as we're
yeah.
reinforcing these pieces.
I was thinking when school's out.
Yeah.
And they've
Okay.
fulfilled their
Okay.
responsibilities, as they're thinking towards the new school year.
Yeah. So we'll do it.
Reflecting how has it changed or how has it impacted the teaching in the classroom? Has it improved?
We'll do it during that back to school piece when they're coming back to us, August, way early in August.
I think that information is important and you can use it to pass on to a parent who has a gripe about a phone,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't matter if it's working or if it's not working. It's state law. We're required to do it. End of story.
That's
That's
true.
right.
I had forgotten it's state law.
It is state law now.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we did it,
But it's good PR.
I want to pivot back to the dress code for a minute,
Yes, sir.
and this is sort of my personal hang up, and I realize enforcement is probably the issue, but attending basketball games and attending football games, even in cold weather, in my opinion, we are seeing too much skin on young ladies.
I agree.
theater as well.
Is there a mechanism or something we can look at, or at least maybe Mr. Hockman can take a look at it and come back to us and with a suggestion or two about how we can deal with that? One of my thought process was if we really push, school spirit, show up in blue, wear your new Kent sweatshirts and cover yourself.
Or t-shirts. Yeah.
And, be a little bit more appropriate on school grounds. This is the school district. This is not Las Vegas. So that's a piece that kind of is a pebble in my shoe.
If I can offer some thoughts to that,
Please.
when on the governance roundtables that were occurred at the high school, one young lady asked, why can we have this thickness but not this thickness? I get it from my perspective,
More skin.
more skin. I just wonder, when people came through with concerns about the cell phone policy, I would maybe send them an article or something. Well, studies show, this, and this. Is there anything that we can do to try and make our case to the students as to why it's important and how, just to, because nobody likes to just be like, you're doing this because I said so. Is there anything that can be said that could just get them on board without us constantly having to gripe about it?
I can tell you what I used to tell my children,
Well, that's the thing. We're not dealing with our children.
but we are.
But we're
We
making
are.
decisions.
But
We
we are.
are, but we're not their parents.
Well, but we govern the policy.
I get it, but can we do something that just might make this a little bit easier, like to help the kids understand
Can I
why
offer
it's being
I
done?
think it's
something
very
as far
important
as-
that they
and I-
follow rules and they learn to follow rules and
Well,
that
and you
they,
can put that in there.
and that is a life lesson that will be very beneficial to them as they go through life. Just like the information in terms of dress code, you got 210 Q1 at the middle school. And as they started to adhere to and understand the policy and the rule, it dropped. And I think that's the important thing.
So did the temperature.
I never, well, that's true too, but Q3, explain that.
Good point.
So
It's getting warm.
my point, is this is the rule, this is the policy. We do this for a reason, and that's good enough. And that's all you need to know. You concentrate on academics. It's not Las Vegas, and it is not a pageant. It is an education, a place of education. Come in.
Right.
Pay attention to education, and then this won't matter. When you start doing that, you're trying to distract me. You're not trying to ask a question. You're trying to defer and move away from the truth of what you're confronted with. People do that with the gospel all the time. So, but I just say, and I know what you're saying, but I don't get asked that question, darn it.
I wish you would have been there.
Mr.
but-
Bott, may I add to what you're saying? There is a difference.
Mhm.
When it's this, I can see your undergarment if you're a girl.
Good point.
When it's this, I probably won't see your undergarment. And you know what I mean by an undergarment.
Sure.
We should not be
Less likely to
seeing
fall off.
undergarments.
Yeah.
Or, oh, right.
Yeah.
So that's part of the explanation that can be given. But to Mr. Bott's point,
I don't
If
think
it's
we
the
need to make
policy, it's the
excuses for
policy.
having a policy in
That's
place that helps people get educated. Here's,
But you said something crucial, which I think is Mr. Dombrowski's point, which is what is the reason? And you said there is a reason, and there is. And if we spell it out, it's decorum, it's respect. It's,
Right.
this is
You're always on
Decency,
it.
this is a
respect.
campus of learning.
right,
We're not here trying to
we're not at the
hook
movie
up. I
theater.
mean, that's what
right.
kids do, but we don't need to promote that.
right.
Right, so it's more about the decorum and self-respect and etiquette and teaching you how to be a young lady and a
And
gentleman.
I'm just saying, if there's a way to just provide those little bit of details to add substance to.
Did you write them down?
Threaten them with
No,
uniform.
because I
Heather.
didn't.
Your opportunity was before
I love
you.
what you said, and that's the point. This is a place of learning.
Yeah.
It's an institution of learning. This isn't the mall. This isn't the movie theater. This isn't even your home, your private home. What you do outside this district, that's up to you and your parents. But when you're in the institution of learning, our school division, whatever school you're in, these are the rules you have to follow. It's a place of learning, a place of respect, decorum,
Sure.
and we have to follow that.
And
And I
it
think-
promotes a different atmosphere between your
Yes, it
peers
does.
as well.
It does.
Because
Especially
it promotes the idea that you're here to talk about ideas and learning instead of socializing. Not that socializing is a horrible thing, but one of the things I'm afraid we've lost a little bit in this society, is the idea that dress matters public dress matters, because when you are publicly dressing, you're promoting an idea about yourself. When I grew up, and I suspect maybe I'm too old and it was way different, but we wore suits when we went to vote. You know?
Yeah.
And I don't any longer, and shame on me. But the idea was, you wore a suit because you were doing a civic duty. And when you're doing a civic duty, you behave and dress in a certain way.
Right. Good point.
Studies have shown, and some schools do this. They have dress up day when young men wear their ties, shirts and ties. Athletes, when it's game day or whatever,
We used to
a lot of
dress up a
times
little
would
bit.
wear the shirt and
point.
tie. It sets an example, and it's a matter of pride in what you're doing. So
Be proud,
be
dress
proud.
properly.
Dr. Nichols, any input?
Threaten them with uniform.
I have the action for us to work with the high school as far as dress code beyond the school day. And then we'll work on the enforcement during the school day. We have plans for that, but we come back with thoughts, ideas, and plans. That's a tough one.
Yeah, if I may, Dr. Nichols. I think, so that we didn't miss it, what Keith was talking about, can we also recommend, we can't make them do it, but can we recommend and maybe even promote the idea of Pride Day?
Absolutely.
And,
Yeah.
you know, the colors and really,
Yep.
because that's the positive side of what we're doing. That's the positive side of what the policy is.
There's a game tonight. Show up
There's
to
a
the
game
game
tonight.
wearing X, Y, and
Right,
Z.
or, you know, a white owl. Everybody, a blue owl.
Right.
Might
you know.
have different themes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and maybe work that into the halftime or
Yep.
whatever, you know. Just a suggestion. That's
Yep.
kind of the positive side of dressing properly.
I did not include that in that piece, but I have that too. As far
Great
as,
idea.
And one last
school
thing,
themes.
because I noticed that the middle school actually had more issues than the high school with dress code. So when we're talking about high school, are we also talking about middle school?
So middle school has a different structure that they have utilized for enforcement. So right now they're catching more. It's just the way they do the first block and how they have it structured. So I actually think that's a good data point, Ms. Cunha.
So
and-
enforcement wise, and it seems a little, if someone is referred, say in third period, what happened in first and second period?
A lot of different things. So we can go down a rabbit hole on this one, but so
But you get the idea of what I'm saying.
I will say that dress can shift during the day.
Yes, it can.
So we see that in the cafeteria.
From the bus to the building.
So yes, my older sister, who I hope is not watching, hope she went to school and was not what
Yes.
But just there are reasons for it. We do look at that and see if there are any patterns among classrooms. as
Yeah,
far as the enforcement
I was
piece.
wondering about.
But yeah, there are a lot of pieces that go into kids are kids. So they
No, the reason I raise my hand is because I feel like I'm not quick enough. And so if I don't make it known that I want to speak next, somebody else speak, which
Ms.
is fine.
Dombrowski, you have the floor.
Thank you. If I can ask, and I'm sure I'm not perfect at this, but I feel like a lot of times, especially during a work session, there's a lot of interruptions. I feel like Helena was talking and both of you interjected many times when she was trying to finish the
It's called a
thought.
discussion.
I probably was doing
Just
the
like
same
this.
thing.
I get that. But Dr. Nichols was still trying to finish the thought and you interjected. If we could just be a little bit more, less willing to just jump in with our thoughts.
I'm
and
glad
wait
you
for
put it
that
that way.
person
Thank you,
to,
instead of being
Finish
impolite.
their thought.
Good point. Thank you. And the idea behind the open discussion is that we're not as formal in the work session.
Right.
But Mr. Dombrowski's point is accurate. Let the speaker finish speaking.
Thank you.
That said, anyone else have any further input on this particular topic before we move on? All right, Dr. Nichols, we up to speed?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Fantastic.
I have my marching orders and next steps.
You
Thanks,
are
sir.
up again, sir, with updating us on the policy integration into board docs.
Yes, the ongoing saga of moving our policies into board docs. I completely misread how efficient and easy this would be. So to me, it was upload policy in board docs. However, when you're dealing with PDF files from as long ago as some of those PDF, so let me back up. Our policies are still present on our website, A through, so we have not taken that down until we're complete. We thought we would be finished by now. However, one of the first stumbling blocks, and Ms. Davis can help with this too, is that when it transferred in, none of our policy letters, the lettering system did not transfer in. So we had to go through the hundreds of policies we have and go this KJR, this. So the tedious and time that's what we're doing now. So that goes to them. What we're doing now is the dates at the bottom were not formatted correctly. So now we're going in and saying updated 1995, updated. Look at any one of our policies and see the 9 million dates. So we're really doing that tedious work now. And anticipate we have a couple of college students who intern for us that are coming back next week. So Ms. Davis has been doing a lot of that on her own in addition to everything else we have her do. So we're getting their reinforcements to add the date pieces to it. That goes back to board docs, and we're back in their queue to do the policy things. I anticipate at some point this summer us being completely finished with it. So part of this is out of our hands. I do want to say that one of our projects that we're going to work on this summer, we're going to carve out, I think, at least 2 days. And my team is going to go policy by policy as a team and kind of go through, is this still accurate? It is something we should do every 3 to 5 years, just to go, it sounds absolutely horrible, through every single policy A to Z. And just, so I would anticipate for you guys, we'll get this updated. The good news is once we're fully updated, all these policies, it's very easy to change them in and change them out. Because now they're not part of a long PDF document. So when you look at like section K, that is one PDF of all the files. So all of those had to be broken and put in and then reformatted. So I misjudged entirely how quickly that process will be.
Mr. Renner.
What is the value add of board docs?
So the value add on that is our policies are going to be much easier for us to revise, upload, search, find, and all of those.
It's basically a content management system.
Yes, sir. It is.
And, okay.
Yeah,
I'll be quiet.
For your meetings, for your agendas, for your policies, all of those things.
Oh,
The policy piece doesn't cost anything additional. It's just a feature we were not using. So,
Okay.
Mr. Reimer, I'm interested in what you have to say and your thought process behind it.
Because I don't think that a good content management system would be this difficult to work with in terms of creating the content for the first time. And, you know, the tedious process that you're going through. There should be macros that deal with the whole formatting. You know, a good content management system should have macros that ease the process of putting documents into the system. And there should be things in place that helps a lot with this whole tedious process that you're describing.
potentially, if we weren't paying $2,700 for the light version, we may have an upgraded piece to it.
So the upgraded piece has some of those features.
I'm not saying it does, sir. But
Well, I've seen other content managements. I know what I'm talking. I've seen other content management systems, and this seems to be, it seemed well.
Yeah.
I know you've described a process that is very tedious, and it shouldn't be that hard.
knowing what I know now, I don't know that we would have undertaken this process. It sits on our website now.
Yeah,
It's not
that's what I'm
easily
thinking. And there are
searchable.
content management systems that work with websites, which would be an alternative to board docs is kind of what I was thinking.
Yeah.
So we're
Um,
are we too much into it now
we
to change?
probably are, but
Yeah, so we're also behind the scenes working on a new website and a new vendor. That's something I can explore with them and see.
and
how
see
that
what
piece
content
is.
management systems they have for the
Yeah.
website, because the website could use one as well,
Yeah.
yes.
So,
May I ask what's the price of the upgraded version?
oh gosh, used to know the answer. It was not worth doing for what we would,
Okay.
just being fiscally responsible and then there is a little more of a lift on our end, but it's
It's like 10,000.
like $10,000, so
Yeah.
2,700 to,
Wow.
so.
I like Board Docs Lite.
So Mr.
I
Robert,
don't.
if you want to get in the content management business, I think there's a market out there.
How far along are we into? You say we're like 60% complete, 70% complete, just,
I would say so, and especially when I get help. I mean, I work on it when I can, when I'm not doing other things and on the weekends, so.
It really
At
is just
night.
making sure the date is
Yeah.
over here versus over, like once you get somebody running on it, which is, we'll have 2 people doing it next week, we think we can close it out.
Which is why I said there should be an automated way for that to happen.
And
I
then
I
they
agree, but
review it
if
to make
the
sure
connection's
that we're
broken,
not-
then we gotta do it the hard way.
Right.
To make sure what, Johanna?
They review it and go through it all before we release it. So it's made sure that everything.
Well, that was
is-
my next question, is once it's in there or keyed in or corrected, is somebody then looking at this version, going, okay, yeah, that's right.
But- And
Or
then that's our
Missing
team,
something.
our team's gonna sit down with it all. That's another part of that piece.
Got it.
And to manually go through it. And I would anticipate a number of red line recommendations for policy from us, just on getting to 2025 and make sure all of our policies are.
I mean, that's a lot of stuff to get rid of.
Yes, sir. So
Yeah.
I would anticipate a fall, sort of that.
I don't envy that process.
So as
Good
an
luck.
ongoing thing, once we get this in place, I won't, I don't like throwing. The sunk cost fallacy is a fallacy. If this continues to be a problem, I think we should seriously consider another.
After this heavy lift, it should be singular uploads replacing the other one without that piece. So if we were to adopt, we have a policy in front of you for a second read tonight about advertising, it would just be replacing that one.
Okay.
Because right now they're all in a long list, and now it'll just be that policy by itself. So it's really a flip. But this huge lift has been a bear.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, anybody else? Moving on to unfinished business. School board self-review, Ms. Dombrowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The update I wanted to provide is actually more of a reminder followed by a request. Ms. Davis, if you could pull up file AFA in the Word doc. Could we not do that?
Can.
At the April 14th school board meeting, I proposed that we schedule a work session to perform the school board evaluation. The reason I did so is if looking at file AFA, it specifies the school board evaluation. The school board reviews its performance annually to ensure its proper discharge of responsibilities to the community. Evaluation is based on a positive approach, identifying the strengths of the school board and opportunities for improvement. This policy obviously was in place before we got on the board. Ms. Davis, can you skip to the norms and protocols? On the very first page. It says at the top, we agree to employ the following norms in all our interactions. And then on the next page, it says we agree to the following protocols. So if you go to the fourth page, item P, when and how the board conducts a self-evaluation. The school board will evaluate itself annually to assess the effectiveness of the board in the discharge of its role, both individually and as a board, through self-reflection and or the use of an evaluation instrument developed by the school board, references school board policy AFA. This document was presented and approved to us at the February 27th school board meeting.
Just for clarification, when you say this document, you mean the summary of the norms and protocols?
Correct.
Okay.
Ugh. Computer allergy. Try to be all ready to go. Okay. So given that the proposal to hold an evaluation was tabled at the April 14th meeting, I asked that the topic be added to the agenda at our May 5th meeting for further discussion. At this meeting, I once again proposed the school board self-evaluation, reiterating policy AFA and section or item P of the norms and protocols as justification. During that time, I specified why I did not want to spend a lot of time drafting a proposal outlining my vision for what this evaluation should look like and the process that it would take place. Because for me, I'm all or nothing. I have to totally do it all or nothing. So to me, and I know we kind of already discussed this evening, but my position on this matter that I didn't want to spend time on it is because there were several remarks that nobody was interested in doing it. So I don't want to spend my time going into this further when it felt like it was really, let's just change the policy and not do it, which is fine because we're not required to do it. It just it's been frustrating for me the last couple of weeks when I feel like I'm bringing this to the board because it says we are going to do it. But then it's this, oh, well, we don't need to. But spin your wheels and go take care of it and figure it out and bring it back to the board. That's frustrating for me. If we're going to do anything, and I don't even agree we should do a school board evaluation. I was just trying to follow what's in the norms and protocols. I would say that we should go back to the norms and protocols and revisit it because it seems to me we're not really in agreement as to what this is and what we should be doing, if that makes sense.
Thank you. I just, one point of clarification, and then I want to address one of your comments. My understanding is that the norms and protocols are not a new set of rules. They're not something that we got to follow norms and protocols. This was a summary, sort of like a quick sheet for us to be able to assess, to take a quick look at and go, hey, this is what we're supposed to be doing for that topic. But that all comes from policy, right?
Mhm.
So when we say AFA and then norms and protocols P, it's the same thing. They're not two different things in the way that I interpret it, right? So that's just a point of clarification. Second, I agree with everything you said except for the spinning the wheels part. That's sort of the point, right? That's what we're doing is having these discussions so that we can then, and I'm trying to keep everything on these agendas and not let them go to the wayside, right? Which is not easy to do with all the requests that I get.
Sure.
So the fact that it's here at this work session is to address exactly the point you brought up, which is, are we going to do this? And if so, how? And do you have a proposal? Or if we decide we're not going to do it, then we can decide that tonight. Then on the next agenda, it's going to be up for a vote that we remove policy AFA because we're not doing this anymore. Right? So let's open up that discussion so we're no longer spinning wheels and we can take some traction on this item. Mr. Reimer,
Yes,
your position on this matter, sir.
I'm in favor of revising the policy to remove this from the norms and protocols.
Do you have any other comments?
None.
Mr. Vaughn?
I'm not sure I'm there yet, although I understand what you're saying, but my catch with this thing, if you read that, the school board will evaluate itself annually to assess the effectiveness of the board in the discharge of its role. And then when you say both individually, then you've left the purview of the board at large. And it doesn't make sense to me. That's one point. The other point is, and I think it really wasn't spinning our wheels as much as the question was, how do we do this? I mean, is this, it's not, we're not going to do peer review.
Mhm.
I mean, that being the case, I honestly, I don't know how you do this. I don't know what the criteria would be and how you quantitate that to satisfy the question here. So that being the case, I think I just convinced myself that I'd rather not have it in there. And our evaluation will be at the booth for
Yep.
voting. Because it's the constituents that really will determine our effectiveness. Thank you. That's it.
All right, Mr. Nebraska.
Yeah, I agree. I have found some rubrics online. Uh, but I don't feel that's something that's going to benefit us. I feel like, again, we could use that time to just have a conversation about what we want to accomplish as a board so that we can become more focused instead of throwing all these, oh, let's do this and let's do that. It's much like the amount that we know that we're working with when we're trying to when we want to do school board training. Just knowing what it is, then we can say, okay, we only have so much time left. What are we going to really focus on? And how are we going to get there? So that we can hopefully have more efficient discussions, but we're more or less kind of on the same page, so to speak, about moving forward. And we work with Dr. Nichols to make sure that we're all on that same page. So I don't think the evaluation's worth it. The reason I brought it up is because I look to policies and norms and protocols and like, what do I do? Okay, that's what we need to do. Why aren't we doing it? So that's where I'm coming from, and that's how my mind works. I'm just by the book and, oh, it says we're supposed to do it. And then I get some, complaints or whatever. And I'm like, why are you complaining to me? I'm just bringing up what said we're supposed to do in the norms and protocols.
Well, I wouldn't take it as a complaint. I would take it
But I
as
do.
feedback.
I do.
And as a result of you bringing this to our attention, we're now gonna, sounds like we're moving towards changing the policy. So that's a positive forward momentum. Ms.
It's a
Cunha,
positive thing that you brought it up. Sorry for interrupting.
Ms. Cunha,
I agree. I think I know what my responsibilities are as a school board member, both individually and as a board. I self-evaluate all the time, and I try to, when I don't get things exactly right, especially as a school board member, I try to learn from that experience and do better next time. So I don't think it's necessary.
all right. I'll finalize that and say that I'm sure there's methodology out there or some framework where we could evaluate each other or evaluate ourselves. I think it's completely self-serving and doesn't provide us any benefit in that regard. So I am in favor of adding this to the next agenda for elimination as a policy. We all on the same page with that?
I think there are some good points in the policy itself that don't deal with the evaluation. So maybe if it's not so much a full wholesale removal,
Pull P out.
what's that?
Maybe pull just,
Right.
Revise.
Revise,
revise.
which
the policy.
if that is what the board wants, I am then happy to look into providing a rewritten policy that could come before the board for consideration that removes the evaluation part, but keeps in there.
I'm trying to find what part you would want to keep. Mr. Best.
I think primarily it's the last paragraph. Based on discussion of the results, the school board develops both short and long range goals and objectives to ensure continued proficiency in its areas of excellence, to strengthen weak areas, and to improve efficiency of the board.
do we have that somewhere else? Don't we have that somewhere else?
I mean,
also?
I'm fairly certain it's maybe not verbatim, but that's sort of a blanket statement as to what we're doing, in our elected roles anyway.
Sure.
And
if
it
that's the
says that
case,
based on the discussion of the results, meaning the results of the evaluation. So now if we're not doing an evaluation, there's no
Yeah.
results to discuss.
good point.
Anyone else? All right, let's add that to June 2nd agenda for one final discussion if there need to be, and then elimination. Excuse me.
So we'll put it on as an item and then a potential action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please.
86.
Yeah. All right, moving on. So school board student representative update, myself and Ms. Cunha. So the both of us, along with Dr. Nichols and Principal Strickland, interviewed the 3 candidates. And 2 young men and 1 young lady. They were all in their own unique way, phenomenal kids. One of these guys was in 7 sports with like a 4 point whatever GPA. I mean, they all had amazing qualities. They were a little nervous, obviously. They're young people that are interviewing between 4, in front of 4 adults. Some were extremely confident, maybe overconfident. Some were very well spoken despite being nervous. They all handled our questions and my questions in particular very well. I was impressed by all of them. And what that led to was a discussion at the end of this between Ms. Cunha and I as to sort of what do we do now? Right? We've never really, and this is our first time, right? So it's a work in progress, but we didn't really establish framework, so to speak, in terms of what this representative or 2 would do. So we got into sort of just a discussion of, all right, how does the school board want to do this? How do we want to build it? And one of the things that sort of came to light was these guys and girls are so active. One of the young men actually said, I would quit a sport to be a school board representative. That's great. It shows your dedication. That's not necessarily something we would want them to do, I don't think. So it led to this discussion between Ms. Cunha, please jump in anytime, Ms. Cunha and I about, well, what if there was, sort of a primary or maybe 2, and if one of the students couldn't make every meeting and work session or had a sporting event, that the other one could jump in its place so that we always had a voice of the student body here. That sort of spun off into a conversation that I think Dr. Nichols, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, and Principal Strickland were having about at the high school establishing a student advisory group. So there's a group of kids at the high school that are sort of weighing in on topics, and maybe 1 or 2 of them are participating in this group, and then bringing back to us sort of the voice of the student body. So, it's more of a discussion. And then the other side of that is we don't do any of that. We just pick one person, right? But they were I was blown away. I think Ms. Cunha was blown away by all 3 of these young individuals.
That's encouraging.
It was phenomenal. I wasn't
I'm
expecting
surprised.
that, usually, and I think there's somebody that if I had to choose, I would choose.
I
But
think we were both in agreement. on
yeah,
who we would
but
choose.
it's difficult because they're all so unique in their own way. Their goals, their ability to speak and assess. They, interesting thing, they all came back to, how they could plug into the rest of the student body, even the people that are not in their social or athletic circles, to tap in and get opinions. These are confident young people that were very, very impressive. But it all came back to school spirit. All of them touched on school spirit, more school spirit, which is sort of where the idea was birthed of
Yeah.
me maybe tying that into dress code and some other things. So it was a really great interview process all around. I'll let Ms. Cunha jump in now, but I think it's, we just kind of want you guys to weigh in on what do you think this looks like? Is it 1 kid? Is it 2 kids? Do we want to have them sort of establish a group at the high school and then they're sending one of them at a board meeting and we don't necessarily care who it is? They're on a rotating thing. Like, what does that look like for you guys? What do you think? How you envision it working? Now, they're non-voting members.
Correct.
But, let's say they were here tonight, they'd be able to weigh in on some of these topics and give their opinion, as to what they think the kids at the school would say. So dress code, right? That would have been a big
Yeah.
thing they would have weighed in on tonight.
That's right.
So anybody, please.
Well, I would say this. I am not surprised because we have amazing students. But I kind of like the idea of 1 member and then 2 alternatives, 2 alternate members. In other words, if they can all 3 make it, tremendous. If they can't, and the alternate has something else going on, then you have two. But I also am really keen on the idea of an advisory board, student advisory board, where I think we get a larger net of students. And we can hear from every tribe, every tongue, and know what what's going on there. And I believe that will also move us toward more school spirit when they feel like students feel like they're heard. It's important that they know that they're heard. And when they have a representative who's coming and sitting at the table and has a voice, the students feel like they have a voice. That's my voice. So I don't know what that looks like organizationally, but I like the idea of the student advisory board. And then, like I said, I would not be opposed to having one member and then the two alternate. And at any given meeting, you could in fact have three if the schedule allowed, but if not, then the alternate switches out. That's all I have to say about that.
Thank you. Dr.
Thank
Newsom,
you.
you weigh in on sort of the notion of the framework of the student advisory board?
Absolutely. I was just pulling up, and Mr. Vaughn, I agree with you. I say all the time, I get to work with some of the most amazing students in the world that is so driven, and that was tip of the iceberg. So yeah, I understand it's a tough choice. So I've kind of drafted with Ms. Strickland sort of a student advisory group initiative, and this has been something kind of on our radar to try to put together. So so the student representative to the school board would essentially chair this meeting, or representatives, however you do this. It's 10 to 12 members, and it can rotate all grade levels. Kids from all parts of the school, all interests in those pieces. So we have a little process on how they would be a part of it. Service 1 year. So we have a structure. Initially, I was thinking after school, and Ms. Strickland reminded me that we do have a structure called IE, where we could actually utilize that once a month. So any kid could be there, and not relying on transportation. So it'd be during the school day, and it'd be a very focused conversation. We'd look at student concerns and feedback, kind of what's going on in their world, policy input. So if we're looking at a policy, or you're looking at a policy, every month we can bring it to that group, and you can go, hey, here's the student voice on this policy, whatever it may be. School climate and culture, you guys talked about school spirit, and then kind of communication. And I think we have an opportunity with this group to do some leadership development, just some real quick, here's how to be a leader in a school or a leader in life. So kind of have that piece mapped out, and we kind of weave it into sort of, if we have a student rep here, they could report out. It also gives them something specific to report out as we do our comments at the end of a board meeting. They can go at student advisory, we tackled A, B, C, D. So I feel like Strickland is amazing. I think we can kind of weave that together to make that a really powerful vehicle for our schools. So yeah, we're excited about any opportunity I get to interact with students.
Good.
Count me in.
Mr. Reimer?
I'm skeptical.
Explain, please.
Well, we're appointing, the school board is a governing body. It has specific functions, and its membership is elected. Having a student representative interact with us while we're engaged in making decisions, I'm a little skeptical about, because first of all, they don't have a constituency. The advisory board is an interesting idea, but once again, the idea that they have a voice at the table, I don't think bothers me a little bit. And I'm trying to figure out how this whole thing is going to work, in practice and what it looks like. I get it that they're impressive kids with accomplishments, and that it's hard to choose. I don't know that expanding things makes it better. At some point, if there are four, what are you going to do next time? And the choice is difficult. I think choosing is actually a good idea. I'd be okay with one backup person. That seems like a good idea. But those are just my general thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brodsky? Okay,
Jump in while Mr.
Yes,
Brooks
please.
is finished. I just pulled up the policy that you guys adopted along with the regulations related to it. I've read through it a couple times. I don't see, if you move forward with this change, I don't see anything that needs to be changed, policy or regulation.
Thank you.
I thought there was language in there where we specified up to two. I don't think that was in an official document. I think that was.
I think that was in the posting.
In the posting related to it. So just from a technical standpoint, no policy or regulation changes is needed related to this. So
No policy regulation changes needed if we wanted.
if you do one or you do
One
one,
or two. Okay. Thank you.
it's not relegated to a number. It actually says several times representatives does it.
I'm serious.
So-
Students who meet the criteria. So that makes, so, sorry.
So,
about that.
Mr. Remmer, is your concern overall, you would prefer not to have a student representative on the school board?
I think, frankly, I remember the mischief I did when I was a student. And I can see this as an opportunity for repeating some of that mischief. And,
You or the
You're
student?
repeating it?
well, there is.
Yeah. Are we just concerned about you and the way you behave?
Perhaps.
Yes.
So I am speaking from experience here. Now, it wasn't great mischief, but it certainly was, yeah. That's why I'm a little concerned about the interactions and the roles. And making it clear that, you know, they're not a part of the decision-making process. If we ask them a question, you know,
Did you bring any of these concerns up when the policy was passed?
originally I did a little bit, not quite to this extent, but as we talking about expanding it a little bit, these concerns now start to play a little bit larger
So
role.
you're not backtracking your approval of the policy, you're just concerned about whether or not we have one or two and the creation of a advisory board.
Yeah, and how that's going to work
His
out.
conscience has come alive.
We got a movie closed down that, never mind.
Yeah, no.
Well, Mr. Ryan, I'm just gonna jump in real quick. I would push back a little bit on some of what you said. So.
Yeah.
I think I agree with you with respect to the framework and maybe the unknown, because we are in uncharted waters and
Yes.
we are testing this protocol, if you will. So I understand that, and it could be bothersome. But I think it's very clear that they are not a voting member at all. They can't be, right? For
Okay.
100
Yeah,
reasons.
yes.
But when you talk about constituency, you know, my light bulb goes off in my brain every time you guys say that word, because to me, constituency, the real constituency, is our students.
I agree.
And everything that we're doing is for them. And their perspective on things that we're doing that directly affects them is, I think, a perspective that we need to hear. That doesn't necessarily change the way you vote, I vote, or Heather votes, or anybody else votes. It's, we need to hear that perspective. It also takes a different turn by integrating their participation into some of what we do. Because, and again, at the end of the day, it's all about them. The strategic plan is about them. The curriculum is about them. The athletic field is about them. The elementary school is about them. So at a high school level, especially with these kids that put in their application, hearing what they have to say about a certain topic or something we're deciding to do or change, I think is an invaluable resource. I understand that they're 17 years old. It doesn't mean I'm going to take what they say verbatim and go, that's what I'm doing, right? But I want to hear what the student body has to say, because ultimately I think that can direct the board in hey, this is what we're gonna do, but now that we've heard this, we can make a little change, add a little nuance that addresses, if you will, the boots on the ground, the kids that have to live with our decisions, right? Is that gonna make me change my idea on dress code? No, it's not. Is that gonna make me change my idea on a cell phone policy? No, it's not. But they could also have some fantastic ideas of things that we haven't heard of because they're running the halls all day, every day. So that's my take on it.
Perhaps. And yeah, I'm not closed to it. I'm just,
trying to open the door.
yes, and
Yeah, so you can get back into school.
Mr. Brown, based on your comments in the reg, it says be assigned a school board mentor to guide them throughout the terms. I'm thinking you may not be a great choice for that. Based on the mischief that you're.
Yes.
I was gonna think
Perhaps
he's
I
the guy.
He's gonna be the alternate.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just checking on that bullet.
Miss Heather, Mr. Brodsky, did you want to finish up your thoughts?
I just
before
love the idea. When I was that age, I had no idea what a school board was. I had no idea we had one. I love the idea of being able to, at this age, we provide them with such phenomenal opportunities, right? With your bridging through the different governor schools, sports. What else could you do to prepare them to become the leaders? And education is obviously so important, giving them the opportunity at this age. And yes, we will have to guide them, and it will be kind of it's a prototype, right? We're figuring it out as we go. So we're going to make some mistakes, but if the student proves overall to be maybe more or less what you've described in yourself as that age, then it does specify, if I remember correctly, that, we will let them go, I guess, or terminate their contract as our school board rep. But if we just decide it's not worth providing this opportunity, first of all, we've already decided it, so we're not going back.
I'm not
Secondly,
saying we don't provide them the opportunity.
I mean, if this advisory board is worth considering, we could try it out for a year. If it doesn't work, then sorry, it didn't work. I just think it's absolutely worth considering different options as we move forward with this and put it 100% of what we have to help them and to guide them and to work together, because they are phenomenal kids. And I think it's another way for them to be engaged in what's happening in their lives at this stage.
Hold on one second, Mr. Look, point of clarification, then I want to come to you, Ms. Cunha. The student advisory board is not designed for us. It's correct? It's
Yes,
designed, it's not
It's designed
just for us or for
No,
feedback also at the
It,
school
no,
level?
it will really be a school driven about the school piece, led by student rep or reps. So, but not necessarily, we will use it similar to as we do the other advisory. So when there's a code of conduct discussion, we'll bring it, we parent, teacher, community, student. So that's the board avenue that I see when we're doing those different vehicles. But there'll be a lot of school-based business that'll never come to the board because it's not.
That's what I was thinking. So it serves
Right,
two
right.
functions.
Yes, sir. Serves two functions. It gives students a voice in the school and also provides the district voice when appropriate.
Is there already in place, and I'm sure I've asked this before, like class presidents,
Yep, through SEA. Yes.
SEA, and what does each class have exactly? Is it just a class president?
I believe it's a president, vice president, treasurer. There's, I think, at least four.
And is that like an active beneficial thing, or is that something that just has been the tradition and it's not really doing anything?
Probably a little of both, but I think there's opportunity to rethink it, especially related to
Right.
this piece.
Yeah, is there a way to kind of maybe incorporate that and give
Wasn't
that
that
more
largely-
substance?
Sorry, isn't that largely internal, right? I mean, my daughter's on SEA and so it's planning the dances and
Yes.
decorating for prom and doing,
I
so it's,
see.
yeah,
Yeah, and each
more
class,
internal.
freshman, sophomore, has a different like focus and
Gotcha.
yes.
Ms. Cunha,
I see all this from the lens of an educator, first and foremost. So for me, being that I taught public school for 22 years and then private school a few more years, I see this as an opportunity for more student outcomes, focusing on student outcomes and the buy-in that goes into that. The more you can get students involved in the process, and have them be part of that process, the greater buy-in you're going to have. That's my opinion. These kids, these students were phenomenal. I don't see them being the kind to fool around and goof around like you might have been, Mr. Reimer. But
You may misunderstand.
I'm joking with you. I'm joking with you. I'm joking with you, but I see this as a very positive thing. Certainly, like you said, this is something new, it's uncharted waters. But if we want buy-in and if we want to change the narrative to really make this a place of excellence, academic excellence, right? This is an environment of respect and of learning to discuss ideas, of learning how to think and form your own opinions and back them up with facts and conversation. More conversation and discussion is better than less. Now, certainly they're not going to be voting, but there's so many topics throughout the year where we would benefit from having that perspective. I think it would make us a more efficient and productive school board, and it would drive our decisions. Certainly, like you said, on some of them, it's not going to change, but it's important to have that perspective because it's all about them. And we're doing this primarily for them. I see them as my constituents. And certainly, high school level students and the ones that we interviewed, which are so mature beyond their years, I see them very much as my constituents. And some of them live in my district. So that's my perspective.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bosch?
I just wanted to add, I have been involved in this model. And what you get is they will not have comment or input on everything.
Right.
But the things that are important to them and what they're hearing from their student committee, advisory committee, they would offer into the conversation. Most of the time with the other things such as policies unrelated to, the student necessarily directly, they really listened more and learned the decorum, learned the process and gained knowledge on how a board works and the different positions and things, that we do. I can see this becoming also, maybe it is the single fact out of everything on a student's application that the entrance board looks at and goes, I like that. That's important. That's someone who, is responsible and can handle this. So if we were able, just one student even, somewhere, in our tenure, to be able to affect them in that way and give them a voice. I think a lot of times, and you're exactly right, with the students, when they feel like they're included, they're part of the group, they may not be, with this group or that group. And whereas the SCA, I look at more as a popularity contest than anything, for the most part.
Mhm.
This position would have that, and initiate, I think, a lot of school pride and be part of,
Mhm.
hey, I want to be a better student. I'm on the student advisory board. I want to be a better student. I'm representing, so I can't see any negatives in it. And having worked in it, it really is, it was everything that happened was a very positive aspect to what the decisions that were made and what we considered. Like you say, we might not change any decision, quite frankly. But the fact that we know the end result. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, so I believe that this is on our June 2nd agenda to, in closed session, at least to maybe talk more about these
Mhm.
individuals and make a decision as to who gets the job, so to speak, and or a backup. So we'll be dealing with that next time. Okay? All right,
Sounds good.
Dr. Nichols, policy revision for advertisements.
Yes, sir. I'm gonna try to go under the 15-minute on this one. This is a second read of the advertising in schools policy revision. So we did work with our attorneys on this one. Board members, just a reminder, we have a great opportunity with this new athletic complex coming on board. We have a lot of partners that are ready to step up and support in terms of advertising. So this policy allows us to do that. And puts protections in place related to the advertisement. So you've had this policy, if you have any questions related to it, I'd be happy to answer. But it does come before you we recommend approval this evening. So we have people that are ready to do this and we're ready to make it happen, but we had to adjust policy related to it. So.
All right, Ms. Cunha? Any comments or input, questions?
On this, no,
Mr. Brodsky? Mr. Vaught?
I think it's a great idea. We're not creating something, we're simply catching up. It's being done
Mr.
elsewhere.
Reimer?
I'm excited about it. It's one of the first entrepreneurial thing we've done in a while.
All right, very good. Well, let's jump right in, guys, because that's the first item on our action items. So do I hear a motion to approve the policy revisions for advertisements as presented?
so moved.
Ms. Cunha has the motion.
Second.
Mr. Reimer has the second. Ms. Davis, please poll the board.
Mr. Reimer,
Aye.
Mr. Vaughn,
Aye.
Ms. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Ms. Cunha,
Aye.
and Mr. Pagano.
Aye. All right, motion passes 5-0. We added an agenda item earlier this evening. We amended the agenda by vote to add the following action item, which is the approval of the addition of the 2 additional prongs under the vote of consideration protocol. And just to recap, the requirement to attach policies, code, or the source information to a board member's request, and the providing of, as appropriate, a level of detail to a plan of action for the board to consider. So, do I hear a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the items as amended.
Mr. Reimer has the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Vaught has the second. Ms. Davis, please poll the board.
Mr. Reimer,
Aye.
Mr. Vaughn,
Aye.
Ms. Dombrowski,
Aye.
Ms. Cunha,
Aye.
Mr. Pagano.
Aye. That ends our action items. The next meeting of the school board will be Monday, June 2nd, 2025. This will be our regular monthly meeting. It will be held here at the historic courthouse in this boardroom. And we'll begin with the closed session at 5:30 to be followed by the open session at 6 p.m. This meeting is adjourned at 7:57 p.m.
Thank you.
That's good.
Yeah.
So I had 3 friends